Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Big Data Show. I'm super excited about this episode to have my dear friend, Jonathan Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
He's a veteran in the real estate world in the state of Florida. He's got a lot of great insight, and really excited to share with you guys just some tips and tricks and things that he's learned along the way that a lot of people wonder but just don't typically know. So, Fitz, welcome to the show, buddy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Nate. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, Fitz, give us a little bit about your background. Like, what makes Fitz cool? Like, how long you been doing this exactly? How'd you get started?
Well, I'm going to start with the blue eyes. That makes me cool, right? And a blue shirt.
They are dreamy.
The beard also pretty fashionable.
I can relate.
So I'm a Florida native. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but then I've been back in Florida ever since. And so that was cool. Got to see different climate, different regions. But I love Florida, and so that's why I made my way back here. Been in real estate for 15 years. Traveled all around the state of Florida. And, yeah, I love it. Beaches and good weather and theme parks and springs. Yeah. It's a great place to be.
It's a little hot for me in the summertime, but I'll stick around just because you're here. Just because you're here.
Thank you.
So I guess let's start diving right in, Fitz. Yep. I want to ask some of the just hard questions, that
Sure.
people typically, just want to know. So let's take first-time home buyers as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, you're a renter. Let's say you've got decent credit. You don't have a big down payment. A lot of people think that a down payment's really high and it's daunting for them, which will scare them away from even exploring those opportunities. Yeah. So can you speak to that for us? What does that really look like? How much do you really need?
Yeah, no, I can. So to your point, Canada is 20% down if you're going to buy a home. We are very fortunate here in Florida, in the U.S. You can buy a home for 3% down, 3.5% down. If you're a veteran, maybe 0% down. If you're in a rural area, also 0% down. So there's a lot of different programs that I think just a lot of people just don't know about. They think it's an insurmountable journey to find a house, and it really isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess most people expect they'd have to, come up with a 20% down payment on the total, value of the home.
Yeah.
That's not the case if you said 3%. You mentioned some programs. What do those programs look like, and how does that work?
So the one that a lot of first-time home buyers will use, it's FHA program. It's been around for quite a while, and it's really to protect the first-time home buyer. There's going to be a little bit more stringent appraisal, inspection, things that go into it to make sure this person getting into buying a piece of real estate is going to be able to handle that, and they're going to be okay. So that's your FHA. That's 3.5%. Obviously, you can put more than that down. You can put 5, 10, 20. You can pay cash, but 3.5% is kind of the entry point.
Okay. Being somewhat familiar with this, I know there's some additional costs that get accrued on top of that, 3 to 3.5%. So, what does that look like? What does it end up averaging overall? So, for our viewers that are really interested in buying a home for the first time, let's say they want to buy a home for $250,000, $500,000.
Sure.
Is it 3.5%? Is it what does it end up being?
Yeah, so I mean that is a great question, right? There's always fees. There's always something else. Nothing is ever completely just straightforward and cut and dry. There's always more to it, and so that's having a professional on your side helps guide you through that and make sure you're not paying unnecessary fees as well. So you're going to have to pay 3.5%. That's going to go towards your principal, towards your purchase price. Mm-hmm. But then you're going to have to prepay taxes, prepay insurance. You're going to have some settlement charges, some other fees that go in there as well. Those are normally going to be somewhere in the area of 2 to 2.5%. So you're looking at maybe a total in of 5 to 5.5% of the purchase price. However, even with that, it's always unique. You could go in, you can negotiate closing costs. There are other programs right now, Hometown Heroes, where if you're nurse or doctor or EMT, something of this nature, you can actually have the state of Florida is actually sponsoring that money that goes towards your down payment. So essentially, you can buy a house right now for 3.5% down. You don't have to worry about the other costs.
Interesting. So, you mentioned a few of those sort of job titles.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, sort of government type jobs?
They're considered hometown heroes, so they're like a first responder or somebody who's going to work in the medical field, something of that nature, police officer, firefighter, somebody of that nature. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So, all right. So I guess my next question for you would be, in this market today, because I know this is what everybody's question is. This is what like everybody's always nervous about. It's just like, is it the right time to buy? Is it not the right time to buy?
Yeah.
Like, what's your opinion on that? I mean,
it's always the great time to buy. I mean, right? I mean, it always is. It depends on what you're buying, though, right? So if you're going after something that is next to an industrial site and you're buying a single family home, maybe that's not the best investment. If you're going to buy something that just you're overpaying for it and needs a ton of repairs, or there's a sinkhole in the backyard. And these are obvious statements I know that I'm making. But the point is, in doing this for 15 years, every single year, probably once or twice a week, I always have somebody ask me, is it a good time to buy it? And it's just it's a good conversation. Everybody's curious, right? So I think as long as you go in and you understand what you're buying, you do your due diligence, you have a professional on your side to walk you through it, it's a good time to buy. Absolutely.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, like, let's talk, whether or not it's, like a HOA play. If it's like a multifamily dwelling unit, like a condo that you want, versus a single family dwelling unit, like just a house that you want. What is easier for a first-time home buyer to get into, and like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, single family is always going to be the easiest, because a lot of these loans, they're packaged and they're sold on Wall Street, right? And so if they can have something in line that fits a certain, uniform kind of standard checklist, that's easier for them to resell that. So a single family house, first-time home buyer, somebody with a credit score of at least 600 or higher.
That was going to be my next question.
There you go.
That was going to be my next question. So, like, on the credit score side, I mean, you do a lot of these transactions.
Do a lot.
So, what do you typically see on the low that gets approved? And, does that require a higher down payment? Like, what does that, fluctuation look like?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going with a traditional bank, they're normally going to want you to have 620, 640, 650 credit score. If you're going to go with a mortgage broker, they have a lot of other lines that are not common to, people like you and I that we would never know about. But these are large institutions that invest in real estate and finance. So if you go with one of them, I've seen 520, I think, is the lowest credit score. Obviously, the lower the credit score, the higher the interest rate. The higher the credit score, the lower the interest rate. So
yeah, it's like buying anything. Buying a car,
yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the haggle.
Yeah.
And that's the uphill battle, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of really cool technologies that are coming out, So, like, I guess with the rise of virtual reality, do you think we'll start seeing people buying homes without ever leaving their couches? And, will the home process now come with a mandatory VR headset? Like, what do you think the future of the industry looks like?
Yeah, I like that idea, and I love technology. I love technology in real estate, just in the world in general. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of things right now go virtual, right? So the VR headset. I know personally when I meet with somebody and I'm going to sell their home, we come in, we do a complete 3D walkthrough tour. So you could be on your couch in California, or you could be at the beach, and you can literally walk through this house. You can see all around. It's like you're in the house, from your couch.
Which is pretty amazing. So, like, have you had any experience having to transact that way yet, or is that still kind of like a little out there, still futuristic? Like, does that make your job more difficult if you don't have your fits for you charm in person?
Gotta have that
smile. Like what does that differential look like?
So, I mean, I think maybe there's two questions there, if I understood you correctly. So I would say the first one is, I've worked with investors, first-time home buyers, not so much because it's a whole learning process, but investors definitely who would come in and they would buy a house sight unseen. And part of this is they feel comfortable, they're working with a professional, they know we're going to get the inspections done, we're going to get insurance in place, title in place, and it's as if they can walk through and see the property. They can walk around, we have the drone shots, they can use Google Earth, so they feel a level of comfort that we can check the boxes, and they say, yeah, this is a great deal, let's do it.
Interesting. So, I mean, and I guess it's just mentioned, investors. When it comes down to that, let's say even if it's just a home you're going to live in, or if, you're a true real estate investor that, owns 2, 3, 4, 5 plus properties.
40, 50, right.
what is your experience in engaging whether or not it's an up and coming area? Like, how do you sort of measure and find out like whether or not it's the neighborhood's going down,
Yeah.
or it's
Yeah,
going to
what's happening?
appreciate? Am I going to appreciate on my home value, or am I going to depreciate? How
Yeah.
like predictable is that?
Yeah.
Considering the world we live in now.
Yeah. Is this a bad investment? Nobody wants a bad investment, right?
Sure.
You're tying up a lot of money, essentially. So we look at some market indicators. We look at absorption rate. So we see how many homes are on the market, how many homes are being sold per month. We look at the inventory. We look at the price points. Are they increasing? Are they decreasing? We also look at city planning, in local municipalities. So most cities are going to publish what their ideas are for this town, this city, this area, this district for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. So we can really dive in and get really a good feel as far as what's going on. We check crime as well. You check schools, So depending on what the person's really priority is, we'll really dive into that. But we look at all these factors really on every transaction to make sure customer that we're working with is educated.
Right. And, I guess that's really where, your charm comes in. That's where that's where your personality comes in. And that's where you really care about, your customers.
Yeah.
So that you can ask them the right questions, get to know them, and make sure that they're going to find a happy home that makes sense for them. So it's really quite the Q&A dance, right?
It really is. We were talking the other day, and I've gone through using online forms to using paper forms to doing this. I really enjoy just meeting with somebody now, understanding what's important to them, what makes them tick. Do they like to go on bike trails? Do they like to go on the chain of lakes? Do they have to be at the airport? What's important for them? And then we just have a conversation. We sit down, we talk, I take notes, kind of compare it if you're going to see your doctor, right? And you're going there and you're saying, Doc, this is what I need to do. Here's what's happening. I listen. I have the knowledge, have the experience, take the notes, and then we put together a plan, make it happen.
Interesting. And speaking of doctors, I mean, that can kind of be sort of like a look under the hood sort of, I guess uncomfortable situation for some buyers, so for them to reveal their finances or like disclose their credit score,
Sure.
Sure. As long as I've known you, you've always made people feel very comfortable and, just
Thank
really
you.
solve their problem,
Right.
So like, I think that's a very important aspect of virtual versus in person.
Yeah.
For you. So leads me to my next question. Next question is, you've got houses that year home built, forever ago. There's a lot of upkeep that comes into that, and then now you've got with technology these homes that are 3D printed, which is pretty cool. So like. What's your take on that, and how far away do you think we are from that? Where do you think the real need is for 3D printed homes versus, a neighborhood that's just got a bunch of dilapidated homes?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So, like you said, 3D printing, it's already happening. It's already in place. We see it a lot in Africa. We see it a lot in South America, especially areas there where maybe materials are harder to come by, and maybe you're building housing for 30, 60, 100 people or more. You can come in and use the 3D printing technology, and in a very short amount of time, basically have a small community,
Right.
that works. So I think it's neat. I think there's still some drawbacks as far as design, type of materials, other things, but we'll work through that. It's one of those things. It's still relatively new, so it'll work out the kinks.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me about like the 3D printed style homes is really the sustainability and the way
Yeah.
they manufacture them. So
Sure.
like, let's say, you're in it's sort of like a disaster relief prone area, like you get pounded by hurricanes, or they're manufacturing homes that could sustain, tornadoes,
Yeah.
or hurricanes, or what have you.
You're
So
solid.
just building out those villages, are you seeing a lot of those communities pop up, or is that still kind of far away as well?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it a whole lot here in the U.S. I mean, it is happening to some degree, but I couldn't point out to you, in Orlando, there's a neighborhood that's 3D printed homes, and there's a developer that's building 150 homes. I don't know of anything like that around here yet. But I'm sure it's on its way. I'm sure it'll be here. And I know across the U.S. there are areas where you can, where you can go visit, and that's happening.
Absolutely. And then there's also companies that I pay attention to. Like there's a company out of Las Vegas called Boxable, and Boxable's got a really cool concept. What they do is it's basically like an assembly line for cars, like car manufacturers, but they're manufacturing modern, really cool homes.
Yeah.
So like with that style, like what does that look like for you as a realtor to like move those homes and still make your percentage as a realtor and place people with those homes? Like I don't understand completely how that business model works yet, if it's just straight to the manufacturer. So just curious what your thoughts are on pumping houses out like crazy and having them delivered on like the back of a semi truck.
Yeah. I think it's super cool, right? I mean, it's a few different things go into it. I mean, it's not new though, as far as this concept. You think about it, like Sears Magazine had a house that you could go pick it out and they would deliver it to your house, and then you called your friends and you assembled and built the house. We have those in Orlando. We have those over on the coast. So I think this is something that is being revisited, has been for the last several years. And I think what they're finding out is they can take and they can build the parts, the doors, the floors, joists, everything they need in a controlled environment, right? So if you're somewhere in Michigan, you're shut down. You're maybe not working outside building a house for 3 months, 4 months out of the year. Well, within this controlled environment, you can make all the pieces you need. So you're reducing your labor, you're reducing cost, you're reducing carbon footprint. There's all kinds of good features that go into this. What I think is going to be interesting is I think the lending side will need to figure out how to make this happen, right? So how do you finance this, right? And then do you buy the piece of land and have this shipped here? Is it a package deal? And I don't know that lending is caught up on that side yet, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will. I mean, I just kind of wonder, like what's included. You get a home that is shipped wherever you want the home to be, and it literally folds out like origami. So manufactured homes have been around forever.
Yeah.
But this new modern style of it is really interesting. Like, does it come with like an IKEA package? To where like it's furnished?
I hope not.
Does so like I guess updating homes too. If it is an older home, there's a lot of these smart home technologies, that connect to everything. And some of them, like, what would be considered like a Boxable would be, just turnkey. It comes brand new, you fold it out, and you've got everything all integrated. It's all smart home, smartphone style. Operated. So what does that look like for people that are moving into a home that was built in like 1930 and bringing like that up to date? Like, do you see a lot of that with, helping your clients do that?
I do. So we have vendors that we partner with, and it is pretty neat to take an old Craftsman or a colonial style home or a bungalow, and a lot of people want the technology. They want to walk in and, Google, turn on the lights, or Alexa, play this song. And so I do see that quite a bit. Not everybody's doing it, but there are a lot of people that are doing it. It's a really neat aspect of, enjoying life in your home.
No, I love it. Like my place is all Iron Manned up.
Yes, I know.
It's all set to just wake me up. Everything turns on, so I have to get out of bed.
Yeah, that's great.
It shuts me down. It's awesome. So that's really cool. So, I mean, really, I'm always interested in what's next in any industry, which, given your experience in real estate, I'm always interested in, what should we look forward to next? So I guess my question very vaguely to you is, what are you excited about based on, the way the industry is going, and where do you think it's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Like, what
Crystal
do you think
ball.
that looks like?
Ask me to pull out my crystal ball.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you've got enough track record to have some projection, and I know there's a lot of variables, and I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
But just curious, what you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, right? We all want to know. We all want to be able to look around that corner and see what's coming next, or what the trends are, what's taking place. I will say this: being a licensed realtor, working with clients during the pandemic, that was one of the most unique times I've ever seen. Being in this business, and we didn't know if the economy was going to stop. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how long this pandemic was going to go on. But what we saw in the real estate world, we saw a lot of people move to Florida from out of state. Those states were closed down. We were open for the most part. People want to be open and they want to be out and able to walk their dog and go on the trails and, live life. So we got a huge influx that came during the pandemic. We also had people that lived in apartments, right? And they were tired of being cooped up in their apartments. So they're like, I've been on the fence. I'm paying $3,000 a month, $3,500 a month for my apartment. I can buy a house with a pool for the same amount of money. I'm going to go do that. So the reason I point back to those, I think always looking at history helps you predict the future, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think we didn't know what was going to happen through that, and we are still moving. Everything is still on track. I had a listing I brought on last week. We had 50 showings and 8 contracts on it.
Wow.
So I think, even though there's been some changes in our environment, our economy, different things going on globally, I think for the most part, there is a big desire that people still want to own real estate. They still want to have their own home.
Huh. Interesting. So, shifting the conversation just a bit, we're talking about quite a bit, first-time home buyers. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to shift it to people that are, kind of in that limbo stage of, I already have a home, I want to sell my home, but, I also want to get a new home. How do you help them through that transition?
Yeah.
What does that typically look like? What's your process?
Well, I can tell you for a lot of people when I initially meet with them, it's an overwhelming process, right? So first of all, you think of having to prep this home and get a contract on this home. Then you think of having to find another home and get a contract on that home, line up financing. There's just a lot of moving pieces on that. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people I talk to, they're just kind of overwhelmed by it. What I can tell you is very successfully, over and over again, I've worked with several people where we come in, we get everything ready on the front side, and then we take them out, find the home or the neighborhood, the community they want to be in, and then we have a seamless transaction where they do a simultaneous closing. So they'll close on this house in the morning, they'll close on this house in the afternoon. Or Some people will want to close on this house and they say, you know what? This has been a great experience, but it's also been a lot, which it is a lot of work, packing and moving and doing other things. So they're like, I'm going to Disney for 3 days, and I'm just going to take a little vacation. Then I'll come back and close on this one, and I'll get ready to move stuff back in.
So it's really just that timing factor, that calibration, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot of lining things up to make sure they all come together.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. So, all right, so I guess my next question would be really for just the straight up hardcore real estate investors.
Okay.
How do these guys heat map where they want to buy? I know we already talked a little bit about, just certain indicators to look for, but, whether it's going to appreciate or depreciate. But these guys that gobble up, it could be, a single-family dwelling unit. It could be 10 of them. It could be a duplex, a quadplex. Renting out half of the quad. So
all kinds of scenarios.
How do you navigate through those deals whenever you got a real baller that is wanting to really go in with another pool of ballers and they pull their money together and then they just start buying the right properties? How do you navigate them through that process?
So normally in that process, we're going to meet with a real estate attorney. We're going to set up a trust. We're going to set up an LLC. We're going to find out if they're using hard money, if they've raised their own money. Those are all questions we have to figure out so we know what path to go down. But then I can tell you really your hardcore investors, the guys who are, lifers or who have been into it, for them, a lot of it's cash flow. And so they don't even really look so much at the appreciation. That's good. They want it. They'll take it. But they look at the cash flow. And
plus tax deferred.
Yeah.
Right.
So they have a totally different perspective than somebody who's buying a house, right? So somebody buying a house wants a roof over their head. They want to paint the wall a certain color. They want to have a nice garden in the back. An investor just wants it to spit out cash. That's pretty much what they want it to do.
That's perfect. Well, Fitz,
as any good investment,
I love it, and that's a lot of good information, and I think it's very educational for the viewers just to really, just get that simple Q&A of what the real estate
Yeah.
world's all about, how it works, and, without having to do all the online research and just trust what you're reading online. So, that's a huge value for you. So if somebody wants to buy a home, in the Florida area where you're licensed, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Best way is go to my website. It is www.fitsforyou.com.
Fitsforyou.com.
Right there. There's some information articles on there that somebody can look through. There's also other resources as far as utilities, local planning boards, different things like that you might want to just kind of dig through and see what's going on. And then my phone number's on there as well. Also, there's other forums on there if you want me to get in touch with you. That's the best way to do it.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, Fitz, always a pleasure, brother.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And guys, hit up this guy. He's great, and he will steer you in the right direction. Thanks so much for viewing. We'll drop links in the bottom of the video, too.